Hello everybody, my name is Boulevard. This is the Fates Voyage Onward Runeterra Open Top 64 Yap session. Because as you grow as a content creator, you learn that even though you feel like you've talked about everything you have to talk about, given a subject, your audience isn't everywhere. And so even though I've talked about this on Twitter, and I've talked about this on Reddit, and I've talked about it in a couple of Discord servers, I haven't made a YouTube video about it. And I haven't been making YouTube videos about it, and I feel like I need to. I need to just, everybody that'll listen to me, I need to just scream from the rooftops. So this is the top 64 from the Runeterra Open. These are the global stats. This is a Reddit post that I made. I'm stealing my own content. We're reacting to Boulevard content today. So these are the numbers. Now, if you'll remember from Tournament Tactician, I said that the top 5 was going to be Warden, Nyla, Janna, hard top 2. Right? Then I said number 3 was going to be Heimer Jace. Bit off on that one. Then for number 4, I said Elusives, which weirdly got that one spot on. And then for number 5, I said Ambush. And Ambush ended up being a little bit lower than Wildfire. What didn't come up in the stats was Jaxorn. And this is, you know, I'm constantly growing as an analyst, and this is more of like a feedback video for myself, sort of like a post-tournament tactician to show you what I got wrong, why I got it wrong, as well as to just give you the breakdown of the top 64. So Warden, we all knew. Nyla, Janna. I had a lot of players coming to me on Friday. So usually when I make when an event like this comes around, I'll get 2 to 3 DMs tops from a couple of people. Usually it's not even until the end of day 1, and it's people who just kind of want confirmation that their lineup is good for top 64. This time around, I got like 10. A huge jump. And a lot of it was players coming to me saying, hey, Boulevard, I don't really like Nyla, Janna. I'm not sure that the deck is there. You saw Aikedo talking about on Twitter how he was very in love with 2 of these Janna decks and still felt like he wasn't going to end up bringing Janna in his lineup. I do want to point out a Janna deck won all 3 events. It was that's actually one of the fun facts down here. It was Samira Janna in APAC, Nyla Janna in EMEA, and then Teemo Janna Champion Strength in the Americas. Just something to note. So, Jaxorn, where did it come from? Jaxorn popped up in the opening weekend and into like Tuesday. So about the first week, Jaxorn was putting up tournament numbers. Then it just fell off a cliff. The stats, there was no reason to think that Jaxorn was going to put up this big of a presence. One thing that I did talk a little bit about in Tournament Tactician was big mid-range, and that was a blanket that I threw out to kind of encompass Warden, Jaxorn, Aatrox, Alawi decks. I feel like there was one other deck that I wanted to include in there that I'm just not thinking of. But the point is, like, Jaxorn was on the radar under the big mid-range umbrella. But I think I need to rethink about how I do the Tournament Tactician breakdown currently, because obviously, like, a tier list wasn't working. I'm not sure that what I've got going on right now is encompassing enough. But yeah, so Jaxorn, we missed that. We don't really understand why it came in, fell off, then had a big resurgence. But it did. I guess people just like Jaxorn more than Aatrox. Who knows? Freljord's very good. Sky Splitter's a very good card. Nyla, Janna, expected this. Elusives. I was talking about Elusives in Tournament Tactician as... Yeah, so when we look at what was going on here with the Tournament Tactician thing, I kept mentioning Elusives because they were good into Warden and they were good into Heimer Jace. Now, Heimer Jace obviously didn't end up making like as big of a splash as we thought it might, but the fact that it is one of the few decks that is good into Warden definitely drove people onto the deck a little bit more. I had mentioned that like this very well could happen. I didn't think it was going to. I was a little surprised by this. Wildfire's crazy. Wildfire's actually got a lot going on here. So, Wildfire is the most diverse champion split that we've ever seen for a single deck, with 7 different champions appearing in Wildfire. They were Samira, I'm not going to try and list them out. While counting the same champions in a different 3-2-1 split as separate versions, so for this, like 3 Annie, 2 Samira, 1 Zed is a different deck than 3 Annie, 2 Zed, 1 Samira. There were 17 unique variations of Wildfire on just champion splits alone, and I broke it down here on Twitter. I thought this was incredibly interesting. So, for decks that only ran 2 champions, these are 3-3 splits, Annie Zed, the most popular. Then when we go to 3-2-1 splits, it was Samira Annie Zed, followed by Samira Zed Annie. Now, when we look at the one that actually ended up winning in APAC, it was just Annie Zed. And funny enough, the champion spell for Zed actually came in huge in a pivotal game-winning moment to bounce a stage hand, get another blocker out of the way, and push through the lethal. So, you know, the Zed champion spell for the first time in the history of Legends of Runeterra has been incredibly relevant. It's one of those like domino effect type memes where it's like they randomly buff Zed spell and now Saruman wins APAC. So I thought this was incredibly cool. I thought this was so awesome. Then when we continue just down, then we're kind of out of the top 5. Ambush, obviously. People were really not sure where this deck was going to fall. Obviously, it has a good Warden matchup on paper, but it's a little bit linear for some people's tastes. You know, it can be a little bit cheesy for some people still. And ultimately, yeah, whatever. Heimer Jace, I just need to accept that, like, I don't know, man. It feels like every season where I think Heimer Jace is going to come out really strong, it has a much lower play rate than expected. And then the seasons where I kind of write it off, it comes out just swinging. So Heimer, Jace, Jax, Ornn, and Aatrox sort of are 3 long-standing decks of the year that continue to pop up in every top cut. I'm just, like, losing my grasp on where they're going to end up. They're going to have a presence. It's just, like, what do we consider a high presence nowadays? My baseline has kind of been, like, 10+, because when we go and look at the actual breakdowns, you can see 10+ puts you in, like, what, the top 6, top 7? Top 7. And then everything after that, and that's just APAC here in the America or EMEA. There's only 6 decks that break 10, and in the Americas, I think it's another 7. Just eyeballing it. Yeah, 7. So we need to, or I need to rather, actually no, definitely we on this one. We need to understand what a high represented deck looks like. You know, it's very rare that more than one deck is going to break half of the top cut. And for the most part, you're only going to average about 6 or 7 decks that put more than 10 people into top cut, which in a top 64 is, you know, whatever 10 divided by 6 is of the playing field. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. It's not a guarantee. For example, like, you wouldn't have success coming in and, like, trying to target Wildfire, right? 15 people brought Wildfire. That's, you know, optimistically, like, less than a third of the playing field. Yeah, a third of the playing field would be like 21.3. So, yeah, like, would not be able to target Wildfire, even though it's, like, a top 5 deck. Just kind of the point that I wanted to get at there. Now, another interesting thing is that AM only had 28 unique decks, and EMEA is actually also a little bit higher. At some point, I got tired of counting the Seraphine piles, I think, and just put them all... Maybe I did go through and separate them out, but at one point I just had, like, Seraphine piles, 4 of them. Oh, no, it was APAC. So APAC's even more diverse, because I just got tired of counting Seraphine piles, and I threw them in. I'll go and fix that later. But AM only had 28 unique decks, which is actually one of the lowest of the year. It is actually tied for the lowest of the year with the Heart of the Huntress open, which was Siren Song. So in the Americas, the Warden meta was as diverse as the Siren Song meta. Now, it was a lot less top-heavy. I will give you that. Because in Siren, in Siren Song meta, we had Reaver's Rosalani, then we had Lucian Siren Song, then we had Evelyn Targon, and here we've got a bit of a healthier spread. You know, Warden encompasses some things, but it's not the be-all, end-all. But it is weird to me that we had 9 different decks win the event, and then the Americas comes out and ties as the least diverse Runeterra Open that we've ever had. In fact, it's one of only 3 events that has had under 30 unique decks. And generally, like, 35 to 40 is sort of the norm. 32 to 37 is a bit of a healthier range, but for the most part, we've had quite a few opens that have been like 40+ decks, just to give you an idea of like what the average is for something like this. Now, another fact that we're going to talk about is Triple Warden and Double Warden. I was pretty adamant about the fact that Triple Warden was a bait and Double Warden was defensible, but it's not something that I would recommend. Here we want to talk about how many double and triple wardens made it into top cuts. So I believe it was a pretty small number. It was, off the top of my head, 3 triple warden in the Americas, 1 triple warden in the EMEA, and 1 triple warden in APAC. And then the numbers were more like 5 to 7 when we talk about double warden per region. So we had 1 double warden make top 8 in the Americas, and then 2 more in top 16. The triple warden didn't make it past top 32. In EMEA, Triple Warden made it all the way to top 8, but again, it's the only multi-warden lineup there, and then a couple more double wardens made top 16. Then in APAC, double warden bums out in top 32, triple warden didn't make it past top 64. So I think people got a little bit baited by how good something like this actually was, and whether or not Warden of the Tribes is what is carrying the deck, or if it is the rest of the package, for in this case, like Demacia obviously being the most popular one. Another thing I thought was pretty interesting was Piltover and Zon Warden actually came in pretty popular on the Warden stats overall, 5 of them, and all 5 of them were the Americas, and it was this Timo Sejuani deck. And that's why if you go through and you click around, you play in this sheet, which will be in the description below, and it's ordered by final placement as well. That's color-coded. Couldn't make it simpler for you. when we go and look at some of these lineups that have PNZ Warden in it, you might notice that like their elusive deck looks a little bit weird because they really wanted the Teemo in the PNZ Warden, because it's a little bit more important to get a Yordle in there than it is to have, you know, the Shrooms potentially come up in the elusive deck, is kind of the line of thoughts that a lot of people ended up going for. So yeah, that is just the breakdown, more or less, some things that I wanted to talk about. Echo Jinx, you know, at this point we've got such a drop off that it feels like we really just want to talk about the top end of the meta. And ultimately, I guess the question that a lot of people were going for is, can you counter Warden? And since Warden only ended up in the winning lineup of one event, I think the answer is pretty unequivocally yes. Warden was very targetable, and it's why we really didn't recommend going 9x Warden, especially because of how weak the sort of tertiary Warden deck would be. But that's kind of just all I wanted to get up here and talk about. Yell at you guys about how we did prediction-wise and what we're going to do better next time. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week with the balance patch.